really about combat. For Shattered Memories, it was much more about flight. So it was that fight versus flight thing we were talking about. It's Shattered Memories, all you could do was run away from the monsters. Every time the other world invaded Silent Hill and you were being chased by the creatures, your only option was to run like hell or to shake them off. So if they jumped onto you, they would start covering you, and you could, shake the Wii controller and throw them off of you, and then continue running like hell. You never got weapons to fight back with. There were no guns. There was nothing. All you had was a flashlight, actually. So that was kind of two different extremes. It was like combat action, Silent Hill was Homecoming, and then pure exploration, pure story, purely passive experience, Shattered Memories. Given the choice between the two, it's kind of no wonder that fans seem to be more forgiving for Shattered Memories. There's a lot of fans that liked Shattered Memories. There's still those that don't, but it seems like there's more people that forgave Shattered Memories for the new things that it tried to do than they were forgiving for Homecoming. But the one that everybody points to and says, this was the greatest Silent Hill experience ever, was Silent Hill 2. So that's the one that Vontrick we've been looking at the closest and trying to distill what is the core of that game, what makes it cool, why are the fans so in love with that particular instance of the franchise. Well, there's a few things that work here. These are what we consider like kind of the cores of Silent Hill 2. One, Silent Hill as a genius loci, okay, or in other words, Silent Hill as an intelligence all to itself. Okay, the town itself is alive. In fact, you could say Silent Hill is a character itself. It's the only consistent character that's kind of like shown up throughout the series. It's also the element of the series that seems to be the most that doesn't change it as much. They haven't done too many new things with Silent Hill. It kind of always looks alike. It looks the same. It keeps the same decor. They haven't like jumped around with different time periods or anything like that. It's been pretty constant throughout the series. Themes: guilt, past sins made manifest. So monsters and locations, puzzles even. Puzzles and quests coming out of the game that are heavily representative or metaphorical of the character's guilt and past sins. If you have a character in Silent Hill that doesn't have that guilt, that hasn't done something bad, hasn't wronged somebody, then that character is not worthy of Silent Hill's wrath. All right, that's kind of one of the key things we started working with when we first started creating our main character, Murphy. Exploration and revelation. Silent Hill fans like to explore the map. They like to find every single room. They like to find every single page of a diary or old book or recording or whatever. They like to get all of that story, and they like it revealed to them in these little tiny chunks that they go out and find themselves through exploration. They like to have flawed protagonists. The best Silent Hill games typically have a protagonist who, like I said, is carrying around some kind of baggage, emotional baggage. Even if the character isn't a particularly bad guy, not what you'd ever classify as a villain, he's still somebody that's done something wrong to somebody. So in Silent Hill 2, it was a man that killed his wife. Now you could say, well, it was a mercy killing, it was euthanasia, he put her out of her misery, but that character was carrying around that guilt. And he was carrying around the guilt of, there was a lot of like repressed sexuality, that he was frustrated because she was sick for so long before she died, and they played on all of those things and made quests and puzzles and monsters around those character qualities. Player vulnerability, very much. He wasn't a badass in Silent Hill 2. He wasn't a super soldier. Varying camera styles. So what we didn't want to do on the new Silent Hill is we didn't want to say, okay, we're going to give the player full control of the camera like a modern action game would. But we didn't also want to go completely fixed camera, and we didn't want to do like the broken cameras that you saw in earlier Silent Hills. So what we decided to do is we're going to do a mixed style. So when you look at horror films, a lot of the horror that you have in those, a lot of the tension is created through camera angles. It's through restricting the audience's view. The monster's always just off frame. He's always just out of shot. That's when you get like the jump scare, the boo scare. Something jumps out and scares the hell out of you. That's really hard to pull on a player when they're completely in control of the camera. If they're looking the wrong direction when the monster jumps in and grabs them, they're not going to be as scared by it. Instead, they're going to be really frustrated by it. They're going to feel like you cheated. So we're mixing it up with the new Silent Hill. There's going to be moments where you have more of a traditional third-person camera where the player's in control, especially during moments like combat sequences where you kind of, as a player, in fairness, you need to see what's happening around you, what's coming at you from different directions. But then in more of those scare moments, and especially in moments like our other world where we really want to lay on the heavy atmosphere, the scares, those are the moments that we're going to switch to fixed cameras. It's also a multi-layered story. The fan base out there seems to really like the fact that there's different interpretations of what happened. So especially in like Silent Hill 2, there's a lot of debate about, did he kill his wife because he was putting her out of her misery, or did he kill his wife because he wanted to be free of her? He was tired of having the burden. And there was, multiple layers happening in that story. And we've definitely worked to try to put that kind of multi-layered stories open for interpretation in the new Silent Hill. Our characters. There's really not a lot I can share with you, unfortunately, about our characters, but I'll tell you the little bit that I can. We know that his name is Murphy Pendleton. As the trailer has shown you, he is a escaped convict. So that right there, you've got a flawed protagonist already, because the guy, you don't get sent to jail for not doing anything wrong. So part of our mystery is going to be around what exactly did Murphy do, what's he running from, and specifically, what is it that he did that was so bad that he deserves Silent Hill? Because as we've seen in the franchise, Silent Hill has a way of kind of drawing people in that need a little bit of character adjustment, let's say. He's a guy that's attempting to escape multiple levels of guilt and past sins. So again, it's going to be up to our players to sort of discover, okay, on the surface of it, Murphy went to jail, so he's done something wrong, and he's serving time in prison for it. But what is it about those actions that he personally feels tortured about, and why has he put himself in Silent Hill? Because really, you could say that any character that ends up in Silent Hill probably put themselves there, right? It's their own guilt that they're running from. And of course, we're going to have the multiple endings based on how the player plays the game. But those endings are going to give you different revelations about Murphy's character and give you different revelations about what's happening inside his head. In fact, you could say the same thing. I can't even tell you the names of these characters. We've seen all of these guys in the trailer. I can safely say that each of these characters is suffering from their own guilt. They've all got some kind of sin that they're paying off. And you don't get sent to Silent Hill for a vacation. You did something wrong to end up there. So you can be assured every character that we've designed for the new game, all of them, if you dig into the story and you find all of the story elements that are hidden around the game, you'll learn that all of them have some price to pay, and there's some reason that they're spending a vacation here in Silent Hill. Our environment. The website TV Tropes has a great terminology, what they call nothing is scarier. And when they say that, the inflection is on nothing is scarier. In other words, the emptiness of an environment sometimes is scarier than having the environment completely populated with monsters. So again, like Jericho, the mistake we had is that monsters were coming at you from every angle, constantly. It was like almost an unending barrage of things trying to kill you from every angle. With Silent Hill, the environments tend to be much starker. They're emptier. It really makes you feel lonely. When you play Silent Hill in the dark in your living room and you're wandering around the town, you can go for 10 minutes, 15 minutes at a time without seeing another character or seeing another monster. And that actually starts to make you start feeling really paranoid, because the longer you go without seeing something, you start realizing, God, something really bad is going to be around the next corner any minute. I just know it. So the longer you can keep ratcheting up that tension of loneliness, the scarier it actually gets. One of the things that the designers are trying to do with our levels is we're trying to make sure that every single location tells a story. So there's different levels there. There's, first of all, on the surface, where does this location fit into Silent Hill? Where does it fit into the history of it? Where does it fit into the lore? Are there any ways that we can tie it in clever ways to previous games for the players to discover? Because the players, the fans really seem to like going, oh, I totally know, this guy was showed up in that game, and that's what they're referring to in this one. So tying it into that overall Silent Hill mythos. On another level, we're trying to make sure that every location reflects some aspect of Murphy's personality. So all of that guilt and the sins and stuff that he's carrying around becomes manifest in the physical location. So all of our settings are trying to make them very symbolic. And then also, we're trying to make sure that they tell a story, and that if you've ever looked at things like crime scene photos, for example, sometimes the photos of the aftermath are as terrifying, if not more so, than if you had seen it if the violent act was actually caught on camera. A lot of times when you see a scene where a murder is taking place or torture is taking place, your mind starts filling in those blanks and trying to figure out what happened and what created this horrible scene. So we're trying to work in that type of psychology into our levels as well, so that the players can come into a really scary looking room and they go, oh my God, what happened here? And they start looking around and trying to piece together in their mind what happened. And then of course the camera is extremely important. The camera is kind of a part of the environment because it's what lets you see those environments. We've looked at horror films, like all the way back to some really early horror films. We've looked at the way that horror film directors used forced perspective and skewed camera angles. They've even done things like building sets with slightly skewed angles and stuff, so that you, when you're watching these scenes, you feel kind of off balance. You can tell there's something wrong with the scene, but your mind can't quite figure out what exactly is wrong with the room that you're looking at. We've played with those kind of things in the new Silent Hill. So, a lot of times you get into the other world, you're going to find that it's like you've just dropped mushrooms or something and you're hallucinating. So we're going to play with some really cool imagery and some cool camera tricks. When we were looking at the story, we knew that it had to be absolutely psychological horror. So the brilliant thing I think about Silent Hill is it kind of has that Henry James's turn of the screw element to it, where you could say none of the events in any of the games was actually real. None of those monsters actually exist. Pyramid Head doesn't exist. The nurses don't exist. Nothing is actually real. Everything actually takes place in the character's head, in your protagonist's head. And that's a really cool element because with horror, as we've seen, the more plausible something is, tends to make it scarier, right? It's why things like Saw and Silence of the Lambs are really scary, because we know that serial killers are real, and we know that they do exist. It's why Jaws was so scary, because we know that there's great white sharks out there. Maybe not 40-foot great white sharks that eat boats, but we know that sharks are real. And I think that's one of the things that makes Silent Hill really scary, is that you realize that if I were to lose my mind, if something horrible were to happen to my family and I were to feel really guilty about it, I could end up in Silent Hill. Maybe in real life I'm sitting in a mental hospital somewhere, but in my head I could very easily become trapped in Silent Hill. Our story was written, I've written the script, but the story itself is being written by Tom Waltz, who's a really experienced and a really brilliant, talented comic book writer. He wrote the Silent Hill graphic novels, several of them, which the fans really seem to have taken to his style, and they think he has a really good grasp of the Silent Hill mythos. So we got Tom on board to create our story and our characters. Our story is going to have those multiple endings. I think I can avoid the Konami snipers by saying it's safe to assume that one of those will be the famous joke ending. Every Silent Hill game has the funny ending. We're no different. Side quest is something new. We're trying to make parts of the game a little more open to exploration, to let the player have a slightly unique experience than like his friend might playing through. So in the way that Shattered Memories did the profiling, where they changed different elements of the game, different visuals and sound effects and such based on your actions, we're having our side quests dependent on that kind of rudimentary